They dragged a
Is that your
54-year-old
weapon?
maintenance man toward a live
A
MMA match,
toolbox?
laughing because they
Come
thought
on,
the
old
cameras
man,
would
let's
capture his
dance.
humiliation. What nobody knew was that Gideon Rourke had once been a Navy SEAL, and he had spent years learning how to stop violence without losing control. When the MMA influencer shoved him in front of thousands of viewers, one calm move exposed a gym built on fear, pressure, and public shame. But the real battle began after the crowd went silent, when a powerful family tried to erase the truth with an edited video. Where are you watching from, and what would you have done? Share your thoughts, and please like and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers for more powerful stories. Desert Crown Performance Center stood at the edge of Scottsdale like a polished promise. Its glass walls reflected palm trees, expensive cars, and the pale Arizona sunrise. Inside, the air smelled of rubber mats, eucalyptus cleaner, and the sharp metallic breath of machines running before dawn. Members arrived in luxury SUVs with headphones around their necks and protein drinks in their hands. They came to feel stronger, more disciplined, more dangerous. Before most of them arrived, Gideon Rourke was already there. At 54, Gideon moved with the quiet economy of a man who had learned long ago that wasted motion could cost more than time. He was tall and broad through the shoulders, though age had carved some of the sharpness from his frame. Short salt and pepper hair sat close against his head, and light gray stubble covered a weathered, angular face. A faint scar cut through one eyebrow, nearly hidden unless the light struck it. His blue-gray eyes were steady but distant, as if part of him was always listening to something far beyond the room. He wore a Navy maintenance shirt with his name stitched above the pocket, dark work pants, and boots that had seen too many concrete floors. In one hand, he carried an old black toolbox. In the other, a ring of keys that made almost no sound because he had wrapped the metal loop in tape years ago. Nobody at Desert Crown knew much about him. That was how Gideon preferred it. He repaired air conditioning vents, replaced cracked wall panels, checked loose bolts on training equipment, and stayed late to make sure the floors were clean enough for people who never noticed the hands that cleaned them. The work was simple, honest. It also came with health insurance. That mattered. His younger sister, Mara, was 48 and still recovering from months of treatment that had left her thinner, tired, and embarrassed by how often she needed help. Gideon never let her hear fear in his voice. He told her the same thing every time she apologized. "You heal. I'll handle the rest." So he handled it, quietly. By 7:30, the main training floor had filled with camera lights. Austin Vane had arrived. Austin was 31, muscular in the carefully displayed way of a man who understood angles as well as training. His dark hair was styled back from a sharp forehead, his jaw clean-shaven and tight, his smile practiced for lenses. He wore a black compression shirt with the Desert Crown logo across the chest and expensive gloves he rarely needed. His followers saw confidence. Those who worked nearby saw something more fragile beneath it. A man who checked his phone between sets, watched comments too closely, and became colder whenever another athlete received attention. Austin was the son of Marcus Vane, the 61-year-old owner of Desert Crown. Marcus had silver hair, a tailored athletic build, and the smooth voice of a businessman who never raised it unless he had already decided someone would lose. He stood near the office doors with a coffee in hand, watching his son set up a phone tripod. "Let's make this one clean," Marcus said. "No complaints." Austin smiled without looking at him. "Complaints are engagement." Near the far side of the mat stood Noah Bell, 17, lean and narrow-shouldered, with curly brown hair falling over worried dark eyes. He wore faded blue training shorts and borrowed gloves that were too large for his hands. Noah had earned a scholarship after a local coach noticed his speed, but he carried himself like someone waiting to be told he did not belong. Austin pointed toward him. "Noah, you're up." The boy froze. "What are we doing?" he asked. "A little lesson for the stream." Austin adjusted the phone camera. "You want to get better, don't you?" Noah nodded, though his face had gone pale. Gideon paused beside a damaged wall vent, screwdriver still in his hand. He knew that look. It was not fear of training. It was fear of disappointing someone with power over you. Austin brought in one of the adult members, a thick-built man in his 20s named Brent, who had nearly 50 pounds on Noah and a grin that said he had already been told what was expected. Austin announced to the camera that today's lesson was about what happens when confidence gets ahead of skill. The brief sparring drill ended badly. Noah hit the mat hard, his wrist folding beneath him as he tried to brace the fall. A few people laughed. Austin laughed louder than anyone. "First rule," he told the camera, "don't step into deep water if you can't swim." Noah sat up quickly, trying to hide the pain. Gideon crossed the floor before he could think better of it. He knelt beside the boy, his large hands careful as he checked the wrist without drawing attention. Noah flinched. "Can you move your fingers?" Gideon asked quietly. Noah nodded. "Good, don't force it." Across the room, Elena Morales watched them. She was 34, medium height, with warm brown skin, dark hair pulled into a tight practical braid, and observant eyes that missed very little. As Desert Crown's physical therapist, Elena had seen bruises, sprains, torn ligaments, and the quiet shame people carried when they were hurt in front of others. Before this job, she had worked as a military nurse. She recognized disciplined hands when she saw them. Gideon checked Noah's wrist with the calm precision of someone who had done it many times before. Elena stepped closer. "I'll take him from here," she said. Gideon nodded and rose. Austin turned the camera toward him. "Look at that. Maintenance man thinks he's medical staff now." The nearby laughter was softer this time. Gideon lowered his eyes and picked up his toolbox. Then Noah spoke, barely above a whisper. "He was just helping me." Austin's smile faded for half a second. The room went strangely still. Austin looked from Noah to Gideon, then back to the phone camera. His expression changed, not into anger exactly, but calculation. Gideon had seen that expression before in other places, under other lights. It was the look of someone deciding how much humiliation another person could survive before breaking. Austin crouched near the tripod and read the comments scrolling across the screen. "People love an underdog," he said softly. "Maybe we should give them one." Gideon's fingers tightened once around the handle of his toolbox. Then he let go. He returned to the damaged vent without saying a word, but Elena watched him carefully. She noticed the stillness in his shoulders, the controlled breathing, the way he positioned himself so he could see the whole room in the reflection of the glass wall. Austin's voice followed him. "Don't worry, old man," he called. "I'll teach you where you belong soon enough." Gideon kept walking. But for the first time that morning, he did not feel invisible. The next morning, Desert Crown Performance Center looked exactly the same from the outside. Glass walls caught the desert sun. Palm shadows stretched across the parking lot. Members stepped through the front doors carrying coffee, gym bags, and the comfortable certainty that nothing truly unpleasant could happen in a place built for people like them. Inside, Gideon Rourke replaced a cracked light panel above the recovery room. He stood on a short ladder, one hand steady against the ceiling frame, the other turning a screwdriver with slow, exact movements. Below him, the polished floor reflected the white overhead lights. His navy maintenance shirt was clean but faded at the seams, his name stitched over the chest, Gideon. The scar through his eyebrow looked paler in the morning light. He had slept badly, not because of Austin Vane's words. Gideon had heard worse from men who had wanted him afraid. What stayed with him was Noah's face after the sparring drill, the boy's attempt to hide pain because he had learned that pain made other people laugh. Gideon understood that kind of silence too well. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Mara. He stepped down from the ladder and answered immediately. "Morning." His sister's voice was soft, trying to sound stronger than she felt. "Did I wake you?" "You never wake me." Mara Rourke was 48, 5 years younger than Gideon, with chestnut hair cut just above her shoulders after treatment had made longer hair difficult to manage. Her face had once been rounder, brighter. Now it was thinner, but her green eyes remained stubbornly alive. She had spent most of her adult life making people feel safe, first as a school counselor, then as the kind of neighbor who remembered birthdays and brought food when someone was sick. Illness had slowed her down, but it had not made her bitter. "The clinic called," she said. "They moved my next treatment review to Thursday." Gideon closed his eyes for one quiet second. "That's good. It means another bill." "I said it's good." She heard what he did not say. "You don't have to take extra shifts. I'll handle it." There was a pause. Then Mara spoke gently. "You always say that like it's a promise you made to someone else." Gideon looked through the recovery room window. Beyond the glass, Austin stood near the main mat, laughing into a phone camera. "It is," Gideon said. He ended the call before she could ask more. By noon, Austin had turned yesterday's moment into content. A short clip appeared on the large monitor near the front desk. It showed Noah falling, then cut to Gideon kneeling beside him. Austin had added bright yellow text across the screen. "When the janitor thinks he's the coach." The clip had already gathered thousands of views. Austin leaned against the counter, scrolling through comments. His black training shirt fit tightly over his broad chest and shoulders. He looked polished enough to belong on a billboard, but his expression tightened every time the numbers stalled. Rachel Kim stood behind the desk, pretending to organize membership forms. At 42, Rachel had a composed, practical face, straight black hair cut to her chin, and a wardrobe built from neutral blouses and sensible shoes. She had once wanted to manage a nonprofit sports program, but years of rent, family obligations, and a difficult divorce had taught her that ideals did not always pay bills. At Desert Crown, she had become good at making problems disappear before Marcus Vane noticed them. But this one would not disappear. "Austin," she said carefully, "take the clip down." He did not look up. "Why you use Noah's face? He's a minor. He trains here. His scholarship paperwork includes media language, not for ridicule." Austin smiled at that. "That your legal opinion?" Rachel's jaw tightened. "It's common sense." From the office doorway, Marcus Vane watched the exchange. His silver hair was neatly combed, his tailored polo shirt crisp despite the Arizona heat. Marcus had the posture of a man who believed every room became calmer when he entered it. He rarely shouted. He had learned long ago that quiet disappointment made employees more nervous than anger. "Rachel," Marcus said, "we're not running a courtroom." She turned toward him. "We're running a business. There's a difference." Marcus took a sip of coffee. "The video is harmless. People like personality." Rachel looked at the screen again. Noah's face had been frozen at the exact moment he hit the mat. "No," she said under her breath. "They like cruelty when they don't have to feel it." Austin heard her. His smile sharpened. That afternoon, Gideon entered the supply room to collect replacement filters. The room was narrow, packed with folded towels, chemical containers, spare mats, and sealed boxes of branded merchandise. As he reached for a carton on the top shelf, he heard voices through the partially closed door. Austin was outside in the hallway. "Friday night," Austin said. "We go live, bigger than yesterday," a second voice answered. Travis Cole, Austin's 27-year-old camera assistant. Travis was lean, pale, and always dressed in black athletic clothes, with sandy hair pushed under a backward cap. He had dropped out of film school after 1 year and now chased viral clips with the restless hunger of someone afraid that ordinary work would make him invisible. "What's the angle?" Travis asked. Austin laughed quietly. "The old maintenance guy. We challenge him on the mat. He'll say no. Exactly, that's the point." Gideon stood perfectly still behind the door. Travis hesitated. "What if he walks away? Then we make him look scared." There was a pause. Then Austin added, "People don't watch confidence. They watch someone break." The words landed harder than Gideon expected. Not because they surprised him, because they sounded so familiar. He had heard versions of them years ago, from men who believed humiliation was a tool. Men who thought pressure could reveal character when all it really revealed was who enjoyed causing pain. Gideon quietly lifted the box of filters and stepped back before the door opened. Outside, Austin was already gone. Near the far end of the hall, Elena Morales stood beside an ice machine with her arms folded. She had heard enough to understand the shape of the plan. Her dark braid rested over one shoulder. Her calm brown eyes met Gideon's. "You heard that?" she asked. "Yes, you should report it." Gideon shifted the box in his hands. "To who?" Elena glanced toward Marcus's office. That answered the question. Later that evening, Noah found Gideon near the loading entrance. The boy's wrist was wrapped now, but his shoulders were still tense. He held a folded paper in one hand. "They gave me this," Noah said. Gideon took it. It was a revised scholarship agreement. At the bottom, a new line had been added: "Participation in promotional activities when requested by Desert Crown staff." "You don't have to sign it tonight," Gideon said. Noah looked down. "If I don't, they can take my scholarship." Gideon read the paper again. The words were clean, professional, almost harmless. But he knew what they meant. Obedience dressed up as opportunity. He handed it back. "Keep copies of everything," Gideon said. Noah looked up. "Why?" "Because one day someone may ask what happened." As Gideon walked toward the maintenance exit, Austin's newest post flashed across the lobby monitor. A black background, white letters, "Friday Night Live." "Can a real fighter humble a 54-year-old maintenance man?" Below it, the comments poured in. Gideon stood beneath the screen for a moment, his toolbox hanging at his side. Then he turned away. For now, he still had a job to do. Friday arrived under a hard white Arizona sky, the kind that made every parked car shimmer and every shadow look too thin to hide in. By late afternoon, Desert Crown Performance Center had changed its shape. The usual flow of members had been replaced by clusters of strangers near the glass entrance. Young men in branded athletic wear, local influencers with phones already raised, and paying members who had heard there would be something special after the evening class. Gideon Rourke arrived through the service entrance at 5:45 with his toolbox in one hand and a work order folded in his pocket. The main air conditioning unit feeding the back hallway had been failing all week. With a crowded event expected, the repair could not wait. That was why he had come. Not for Austin, not for the cameras, not for the black poster on every screen in the lobby. Friday Night Live. Can a real fighter humble a 54-year-old maintenance man? Gideon did not look at it twice. He had spent enough years learning that a person could lose control of a room without ever raising his voice. He knew what Austin wanted: an angry reaction, a frightened retreat. Anything that could be edited into a story where the younger man looked powerful. Gideon would not give him either. In the staff corridor, Elena Morales waited beside a rolling cart of ice packs and athletic tape. Her dark braid was tied higher than usual, and the calm expression she normally wore around injured athletes had hardened into something watchful. "You could leave," she said. Gideon opened his toolbox. "The unit still needs fixing. You know that is not what I meant." He glanced at her. "I know." Elena lowered her voice. "I saved the clip from yesterday. I saved the schedule too. Rachel sent me screenshots of Austin's notes before she lost access to the event folder." Gideon paused. "Why?" he asked. "Because I have seen people get hurt here and call it training." Her eyes moved toward the main floor. "And because I spent enough time in military hospitals to know that silence can become its own kind of injury." For a moment, Gideon had no answer. Then he nodded once and carried the toolbox toward the rear vent. On the main floor, Austin Vane was already performing. He wore a fresh black gi with gold lettering across the chest, his hair perfectly styled, his smile clean and bright beneath the studio lights. 3 cameras had been arranged around the mat. 1 wide-angle camera for the live stream, 1 mounted low for dramatic movement, and 1 held by Travis Cole, who paced near the edge with a gimbal in both hands. The viewer count on the large monitor climbed steadily. 2,000, 4,000, 7,000. Marcus Vane stood near the office doors, dressed in a fitted charcoal polo and dark slacks, looking less like a gym owner than a man attending a private investment meeting. His silver hair was neat, his expression unreadable. He watched the number rise and said nothing. Rachel Kim stood behind the front desk, pretending to review membership invoices. Her shoulders were rigid. A small flash drive sat inside the pocket of her beige cardigan, pressed against her ribs like a secret with weight. Near the back wall, Noah Bell sat alone on a bench, his wrapped wrist resting in his lap. He had changed into a clean gray hoodie, but his face looked younger than usual. He was not there to watch. He was there because Austin's assistant had told him scholarship athletes were expected to support the center. Beside him stood Darren Pike, the evening security guard. Darren was a broad, middle-aged man with a shaved head, brown skin, and a tired face softened by a short beard. He had spent 15 years working event security after leaving a warehouse job that injured his knee. He was not cruel, but he had learned to follow instructions when wealthy people spoke in calm voices. "Stay where you are," Darren told Noah quietly. "No trouble tonight." Noah nodded, though his eyes moved toward the hallway. At 6:30, Austin clapped his hands. "Everybody ready?" The crowd answered with cheers. He smiled at the livestream camera. "Tonight, we have a special guest. Somebody who has been acting real important around here lately." Gideon was still in the hallway, kneeling beside the open vent panel. He had one hand inside the metal housing when he heard footsteps behind him. Austin appeared first, followed by Travis and 2 younger members holding phones. "Hey," Austin said, "we need you out there." Gideon did not turn around. "I'm working." Austin leaned against the wall. "You always working. Funny how you only get busy when people want to see what you can do." Gideon slowly removed his hand from the vent. "Move." Austin's smile widened. "That a threat?" No. It was only 1 word. But it carried enough stillness that Travis stopped filming for half a second. Austin stepped closer, close enough for Gideon to smell the sharp citrus cologne beneath the sweat. "Come on, old man, just a friendly demonstration. I didn't agree to one. That is not what people came to see." Gideon stood. At 54, he was not as fast as he had once been, but he remained taller than Austin by an inch and broader through the shoulders. He did not square up. He did not clench his fists. He simply lifted his toolbox. "I have work to finish." Austin moved into the doorway. The hallway narrowed around them. From the main floor, the crowd could not hear every word. But Elena could see Gideon through the open side door. She saw Austin block the exit. She saw Gideon glance once toward the repair panel, then toward the lobby, measuring distance, people, cameras. Then Noah stood from the bench. "Mr. Vane," he called, his voice shaking but clear enough to cut through the music. He said no. For one brief second, the room changed. Austin looked toward Noah. Marcus looked toward Noah. Darren's hand lifted slightly, not touching the boy, but warning him. Noah swallowed hard. His face had gone pale, yet he did not sit down. He said no, Noah repeated. The live stream chat began to race across the monitor. Austin laughed, but the sound came out thinner than before. Relax, kid. Nobody is forcing anybody. Then he reached down, grabbed Gideon's toolbox by the handle, and pulled it from his hand. The metal case hit the floor with a sharp crack. That was the moment Elena started recording. Not from the fight, from the beginning. Austin stepped backward toward the mat, holding his arms open as if he were welcoming a guest. Come on, Gideon. Show everyone you are not scared. Gideon looked at the toolbox on the floor. A wrench had rolled halfway into the hallway. His name tag hung crooked on his shirt. He could have picked it up. He could have walked away. But Austin was still blocking the path, and the crowd had closed in behind him. Gideon walked onto the mat. The cheering rose. Austin bounced lightly on his toes, smiling for the cameras. No hard feelings, he said. I just want to teach you a little respect. Gideon stood still, hands open at his sides. You are the one who needs to learn it, he said. Austin's smile disappeared. For the first time that night, he looked less like an entertainer and more like a man who had been denied the reaction he wanted. He moved first. Not with a clean competition strike, but with a sudden shove meant to send Gideon backward in front of the cameras. Gideon shifted one step aside. Austin's balance broke. What happened next was fast, controlled, and almost quiet. Gideon redirected Austin's arm, took away his footing, and guided him down onto the mat with enough force to stop the attack, but not enough to cause injury. Before Austin could scramble upright, Gideon held his wrist and shoulder in a secure position, keeping his weight balanced and his breathing steady. Austin twisted, embarrassed more than hurt. Get off me, he shouted. Gideon did not tighten his hold. Stop fighting, he said. Austin tried again, then looked toward the cameras. The crowd had fallen silent. The comment feed had become a blur. Finally, Austin tapped the mat, once, twice. Gideon released him immediately and stood. He did not raise his hands. He did not look at the viewer count. He did not wait for applause. He picked up his toolbox from the hallway. Then he looked down at Austin, whose gi was wrinkled and whose face had gone red beneath the lights. Next time, Gideon said quietly, ask before you pull someone onto a mat. He turned away and walked back toward the broken air conditioning unit. Behind him, no one cheered. Not yet. But every camera in the room had seen what happened. By Saturday morning, Desert Crown had chosen its version of the story. The video released by Marcus Vane's media team lasted 18 seconds. It began with Gideon Rourke standing over Austin on the mat. It showed none of the hallway, none of the blocked exit, none of the toolbox striking the floor, and none of Austin's first shove. The caption beneath it was simple. Maintenance Ampin attacks Desert Crown coach during live event. Austin appeared in a follow-up post wearing a soft brace around his wrist. His dark hair was unstyled for once, and the camera caught the faint shadows beneath his eyes. To strangers, he looked shaken. To those who knew him, he looked rehearsed. I invited him to participate, Austin said quietly. I didn't expect him to use military tactics on me. The clip spread before noon. Gideon watched none of it. He sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment, still wearing yesterday's work pants, his toolbox resting by the door. The morning light came through cheap blinds and thin gray strips. His phone vibrated every few minutes. Unknown calls, messages, notices from Desert Crown's employee portal. At 10:17, the official email arrived. Administrative suspension, pending internal review. No pay mentioned, no explanation beyond conduct inconsistent with workplace safety. Gideon read it twice, then set the phone down. Across from him, Mara Rourke held a mug of tea between both hands. She looked tired, her chestnut hair loosely clipped back, her green eyes fixed on her brother's face. She had come over after seeing the video online, despite Gideon asking her not to drive. They cut it, she said. Yes. Then show the whole thing. It doesn't always work that way. Mara's expression tightened. You spent your whole life carrying things alone. Don't turn this into another one. Gideon looked toward the window. For years, silence had been his safest habit. It had helped him leave old memories where they belonged. It had helped him work unnoticed. But now silence had a cost. Noah, Elena, Rachel. Every person who had watched Austin turn fear into entertainment. I'm not trying to carry it, Gideon said. I'm trying not to make it worse. Mara reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Sometimes the truth gets worse before it gets heard. That afternoon, Elena arrived with a laptop case and a folded rain jacket over one arm. Though Scottsdale had not seen rain in weeks, her calm face was strained, but her voice stayed even. I made 3 copies, she said. Original file, cloud backup, and an encrypted drive. Gideon looked at her. The full recording? From Noah saying you refused. Through Austin taking your toolbox. Through the tap. She opened the laptop. The timestamps are intact. A man followed her inside. Daniel Mercer was 50, tall but slightly stooped through the shoulders, with close-cropped brown-gray hair, a tired face, and a neatly trimmed beard that could not hide the lines around his mouth. He wore a plain navy blazer over an open-collar shirt and carried a canvas legal bag instead of a briefcase. There was nothing theatrical about him. He spoke like a man who had learned, after years of representing veterans and workers, that panic could make good people say things they regretted. Elena contacted a legal aid network, Daniel said. They sent me the facts. I'm here to understand them, not decorate them. Gideon nodded. Daniel watched the full video once without interrupting. Then he watched it again. When it ended, he folded his hands. You have 3 important points, he said. You declined. You were physically blocked and had your property taken. Then Austin initiated contact. Your response appears controlled and brief. Appears, Gideon asked. Courtrooms don't deal in certainty as often as television does. Daniel leaned forward. But you have evidence. That matters. At 7 that night, Elena's phone rang. It was Rachel Kim. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I can't talk long. In the background came the faint sound of an office printer. Rachel? Elena asked. I found the event notes. Austin wrote that Gideon needed to be pushed into the frame. Marcus approved the live stream budget. Her breath caught. There are incident reports too. 3 injuries from prior challenge videos. 2 members signed nothing. 1 was a minor. Elena looked at Gideon. Can you get them out? She asked. I already did. A pause. Then Rachel said, I have to go. They're checking access logs. The call ended. For a moment, nobody spoke. Daniel slowly opened his legal bag. That changes the case, he said. Not because it proves every accusation, but because it shows this may not be one bad night. Monday brought a request from the Vane family's attorney. They sought an emergency protective order that would bar Gideon from Desert Crown, prohibit him from contacting Austin, and publicly frame him as a continuing threat. Daniel explained the hearing would not decide the entire case. It would decide whether the court believed there was an immediate danger requiring restrictions. Gideon wore his only suit to the courthouse. Charcoal gray, 8 years old, carefully pressed. The sleeves were a little short at the wrists. Mara had repaired a loose button the night before. The courtroom was smaller than Gideon expected. No dramatic benches, no cameras allowed inside. Just fluorescent lights, pale walls, and people waiting for strangers to decide which version of the truth would survive. Austin sat beside Marcus at the opposite table. He wore a dark suit, his wrist brace gone. Marcus stared straight ahead, polished and calm. Daniel placed Elena's drive and Rachel's documents in front of him. When the judge asked whether Gideon had been invited onto the mat voluntarily, Austin's lawyer answered quickly, Yes, Your Honor. It was a friendly demonstration. Daniel stood. Then we should watch the invitation. The full video played. Noah's voice came first. He said no. Then Austin blocking the hallway, the toolbox, the shove, the fall, the immediate release after the tap. No one moved while it played. Daniel then submitted Rachel's records, event notes, internal emails, and reports of prior injuries connected to filmed challenge sessions. The judge did not rule on every allegation. She did not declare Gideon innocent of every possible future claim, but she denied the emergency protective order. The evidence presently before the court, she said, does not establish that Mr. Rourke initiated an unprovoked attack. The matter warrants further review. Outside the courthouse, Gideon stood beneath the harsh Arizona sun with Daniel, Elena, and Mara beside him. It was not victory, not yet, but for the first time since Friday night, the story no longer belonged only to the people who had tried to sell it. The weeks after the hearing did not feel like victory. They felt like waiting. Desert Crown Performance Center remained open at first, though the bright banners outside began to look less like promises and more like a cover someone had forgotten to remove. The Arizona Athletic Commission requested records connected to the filmed challenge sessions. The State Labor Office asked for employee schedules, incident reports, and copies of the scholarship agreements. Daniel Mercer warned Gideon not to expect quick answers. Truth has paperwork, Daniel told him one afternoon, and paperwork moves slower than fear. Gideon understood slow. He spent the first week after the hearing applying for temporary maintenance work. A small apartment complex gave him 3 nights of repairs. A church hired him to replace broken ceiling fans in its fellowship hall. He did not complain about the hours. He only worried when the health insurance notice arrived, reminding him that his coverage would end if Desert Crown formally terminated him. Mara found the letter on his kitchen counter. "You didn't tell me," she said. Gideon stood at the sink, washing a coffee mug that was already clean. There was nothing to tell yet. Mara's green eyes hardened with the same quiet stubbornness she had carried through every treatment room and every bad diagnosis. There is always something to tell. You just decide you have to say it alone. Before Gideon could answer, someone knocked on the apartment door. It was Noah. The boy stood in the hallway with his backpack hanging from one shoulder. He looked thinner than he had at Desert Crown, but his posture had changed. He was still nervous, still quiet, yet he no longer looked like he was trying to disappear. "I quit," Noah said. Gideon stepped aside. "Come in." Noah sat at the kitchen table and explained that Marcus had suspended his scholarship after he spoke in court. His mother had been angry at first, frightened by the loss of opportunity. But then she watched Elena's full video. She told Noah that no scholarship was worth teaching him to stay silent when someone was wrong. "She said she was proud of me," Noah said, looking down at his hands. "Nobody ever said that about me standing up to anyone." Gideon sat across from him. "They should have. What do I do now?" Gideon did not answer immediately. He thought of the mats at Desert Crown, the cameras, the silence that had protected the wrong people. Then he thought of all the teenagers who learned fear before they learned confidence. "You keep training," he said, "but somewhere that teaches you why." 2 days later, Elena called Gideon from the parking lot of a small community center on the south side of Scottsdale. "I need you to come here," she said. When Gideon arrived, he found a low beige building with faded murals painted along one wall. Children's bicycles leaned near the entrance. Through the open doors came the sound of basketballs, laughter, and a coach's whistle. Elena stood beside a woman in her late 50s named Lorraine Price. Lorraine was short, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a soft gray cardigan over a t-shirt with paint on one sleeve. Her silver curls framed a face lined by years of work, grief, and stubborn hope. She had run the center for nearly 2 decades, long enough to see programs lose funding, kids lose direction, and whole families return because they had nowhere else to go. "I saw the hearing," Lorraine said. "Not the edited nonsense. The real video." Gideon shifted uneasily. "I'm not looking for attention." "Good," Lorraine replied. "Attention is not what we need." She pointed through the gym doors. "We need someone who can teach kids how not to become the people who hurt them." The center had an unused multi-purpose room with old mats stacked in a closet. Lorraine wanted to start an evening self-protection class for teenagers. Elena offered to oversee safety and injury prevention. Noah could help organize equipment and encourage younger students who felt out of place. Gideon looked at the old mats. For years, he had avoided rooms like that, not because he feared what he knew, because he feared being asked to become the man he had once needed to be. But this was different. These children did not need a fighter. They needed someone calm. "I'll do it," he said. The news from Desert Crown arrived a month later. Rachel Kim had verified the internal files through her attorney before providing them to investigators. The records showed unreported injuries, unclear consent forms, and repeated planning notes describing humiliation as a strategy for online engagement. Several former members came forward. One had suffered a shoulder injury during a filmed challenge. Another described being threatened with membership cancellation after refusing to appear on camera. Sponsors withdrew. Memberships dropped. The Athletic Commission ordered Desert Crown to suspend all unsupervised sparring exhibitions while the investigation continued. Marcus Vane released a statement claiming the center had failed to maintain appropriate oversight. It was the closest he came to admitting anything. Austin disappeared from social media for a while. Then, one evening, Noah saw him through the window of a modest neighborhood martial arts school. Austin wore a plain white uniform with no gold lettering. No phone in his hand, no camera following him. He stood at the back of a beginner class, listening while an older instructor corrected his stance. Noah told Gideon about it later. "Do you think he changed?" Noah asked. Gideon considered the question. "Starting over is not the same as changing," he said, "but it can be where change begins." The first night of the new class, 15 teenagers waited on the old mats at Lorraine's center. Some were loud. Some stared at the floor. One girl stood near the door as if she might leave at any moment. Gideon entered wearing a simple dark training shirt and work pants. No medals, no title, no mention of the past. Elena stood nearby with a first aid kit. Noah handed out water bottles and showed the smallest kids where to place their shoes. Gideon looked around the room. "First rule," he said, "no one here has to prove they are tougher than anyone else." The room grew quiet. "We learn to stay calm. We learn to leave when we can, and when we cannot leave, we learn to protect ourselves without losing who we are. Later, after the kids had gone home, Gideon stayed behind to wipe the mats clean. The movement was familiar, slow, steady, honest. Above the doorway, Lorraine had hung a hand-painted sign. Stillwater Training, respect the mat. Respect the person across from you. Gideon looked at it for a long moment. Then he switched off the lights and stepped into the warm Arizona night. For the first time in years, he was not walking away from the past. He was putting it to work. True strength is not found in the moment we finally prove someone wrong. It is found in the moment we are hurt, misunderstood, or pushed aside, and still choose dignity over revenge. Gideon's story reminds us that God can use the very places where people tried to make us feel small. A floor someone forced you to clean, a season someone used to shame you, a door that seemed closed in your face. Sometimes those are the places where God quietly prepares a new purpose. Maybe you are facing disrespect at work, loneliness at home, pressure at school, or a battle nobody else can see. Do not believe that being quiet means you are weak. Do not believe that being overlooked means you are forgotten. God sees the heart, the struggle, and the strength you carry when no one is applauding. The miracle is not always that life becomes easy. Sometimes the miracle is that God gives you enough peace to keep your character when others try to take it from you. And sometimes, when the time is right, He turns your pain into a path that helps someone else stand taller. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment and tell us, what does true strength mean to you? And subscribe to the channel for more stories about courage, justice, faith, and second chances. May God protect you, guide your steps, strengthen your heart, and bless you and your family with peace.